When in doubt, bring a shovel. So, I've done something a little odd. I've started to actually get into playing video games a little more. Nothing current gen. Oh no. Not even anything last gen. I am not spending that kind of money for rigs that I don't think I'm going to play enough to be worth it. No, this is for my good old trusty PS3. And there's a couple of that I've played in the last couple of months that I'll probably end up talking about. But first up, I want to talk about Shovel Knight. Now, obviously, this is hardly topical. This is an old game. These are all going to be old games. But, this is what the break room is for. Just drop my thoughts on stuff. So Shovel Knight, if you didn't know, is a retro-style platformer. And when I say retro, I don't just mean mechanically retro. I don't mean something like Ori and the Blind Forest, where the way it plays is a little bit old-fashioned, but the look very modern. No. This looks and sounds like an 8-bit NES game. This has been very carefully crafted to evoke a very specific era of gaming. And it is one I have nostalgia for. So this thing had a good chance of suckering me in. If you are as old as me, then I would say it plays a bit like a cross between Mega Man and DuckTales, both on the NES. In terms of getting stronger and getting more abilities for the character you play of Shovel Knight, the way the boss fights work, those are kind of Mega Man-esque, as are some of the level layouts. But some of the ways that mechanically it plays, specifically in terms of Shovel Knight's ability to jump down with his shovel pointed downwards to then sort of bounce off things, well, that's just straight up DuckTales. That's just what that is. And there's some other things in there as well. But those are most of the major influences. With a little bit of Mario 3 in there in terms of the world map, I suppose. So the way that it plays is that you progress your way through these levels to get to a themed knight at the end of it, and then you fight that knight. Things like Plague Knight and Spectre Knight and Treasure Knight and all these various strange things, eventually to get to the Enchantress. And that's your final boss. Now, at time of recording, I have played through the main game once. I got the bundle that came with the additional games that included more versions with other knights. Like there's ones where you can play as Plague Knight, Spectre Knight, and I think King Knight is the other one, which I've played a little of, and I'll touch on those a little bit later. But it plays really well, and it does a fantastic job of evoking that era. It was so bizarre to play something that I've never played before, and to feel it scratch a nostalgia itch. Like to feel like I was 8 years old again and playing my Nintendo hooked up to this old analog TV that you actually had to pull the button out to turn the thing on. Oh, that thing was ancient. But that was what I played my NES on, and it brought all that back while being a completely new game, and a surprisingly deep one as well. The ways that you can sort of progress and make things easier for you down the line, it's things like increasing your health level, getting new magic spells and abilities, including increasing the amount of magic that you have to draw from in order to use those abilities. And some of them are just, some of them are like projectiles, some of them are more traversal powers and things like that. It's a good mix of stuff. It's really well balanced. It's incredibly well designed. That said, it does pull some of the BS from the Nintendo era that I could have done without. The big one being spikes and spikes being an instant kill, which it cribs from Mega Man and a bunch of other stuff. Here's the problem with spikes being an instant kill. It wouldn't bother me so much if they were only ever on the floor, but they're not. Sometimes they're on the ceiling. Sometimes they're on the wall. So I move a pixel too far to the right on full health, and suddenly I am splattered across the dimension and need to go back to the last checkpoint. Props to the checkpoint system, though. That's well implemented, and also the fact that if you are feeling cocky, you can actually destroy the checkpoints and get a boost, but that means that if you die, you get sent back to whatever the previous checkpoint was that you didn't destroy. That's really well implemented. But those friggin' spikes, especially because there's usually going to be several screens worth of platforming challenges for you to work through from one checkpoint to the next in any given level. And putting spikes towards the end, like in the last room before you hit the next checkpoint, after I've had to navigate all this other crap, and then I hit a spike at the end, right before I get to the next checkpoint. It's not insurmountable, because I was able to beat the game, but it is infuriating in the bad way. Because there's the kind of frustration that just, it makes you get the job done. I've never been a controller thrower. I came close at a few points. Like I did have to stop playing the game because I was getting so angry at it. And that's too much. It's okay to frustrate the player, but it should not be to the level where it's actually in my best interest to stop playing. Because that was the point that I got at a few times. But it is ultimately a good game, despite my annoyances with some of that. It's even got some decent storytelling. If you are willing to dig through the dialogue a little bit, talk to some of the NPCs, and some of the stuff done at the very end is actually quite intriguing in terms of the way it demonstrates through gameplay some of what it's doing. It's pretty well done. Now I've unlocked the other three ways to play, or the other three characters to play as. There's also other modes. There's I want to say it's a battle mode. I don't know if it actually is, but it plays that way where like you're on. It's almost like Smash Brothers where you're on this thing and you are either fighting the other knights or you are trying to meet an objective before they do, and also getting to fight them as you go. You don't have to play as Shovel Knight. You can play as any one of these other knights and characters. I've played through that once. I beat it with Shield Knight. And I've played parts of it with a few others. It's nicely varied. Like, that's a cool mode. I like that. So, the other knights, Plague Knight, Spectre Knight, King Knight. I've gotten the furthest with Spectre Knight out of those three because that was the easiest one for me to get a handle on because they all play significantly different, mainly in terms of their movement and how far their jumps take them, what technique they use to get further in a jump to initiate a double jump or some equivalent of that, or whatever is going to be what gets them where they need to get because they have a shorter jump distance than Shovel Knight does in all three cases, I think. Spectre Knight is able to wall run a limited amount. Plague Knight uses bombs to propel himself. King Knight does this kind of dash, and then when he hits what he lands on, he does a spin that can send him up. So they have actually had to redesign. They do it the least with Plague Knight. Plague Knight pretty much playing the same levels as Shovel Knight was, but definitely Spectre Knight and King Knight, they've redesigned the levels in the game, especially for Spectre Knight, to account for the way that these characters move about so that it's a new set of platform challenges. It's an impressive amount of work for what are ultimately add-ons. As I said, Spectre Knight I've gotten the furthest with. I got a handle on him. Plague Knight, First time trying him, I couldn't even get through the first level. Trying to get a handle on the way he moves is not impossible, but it is so different from all the rest of them. Because his jump especially is so indirect. He doesn't just jump. He has to propel himself with the bomb, and sometimes you have to charge up the bomb thing, but so you could do it far. Like it's a thing. I did eventually go back and get through that first level. I think I even got through one after that, but like he was hard to get a handle on. King Knight's kind of in the middle between the two of them, but there's an impressive amount of heart and work poured into this game that is designed to look like something so simple, so basic. It's actually really hard to evoke that era visually, audio-wise, gameplay-wise, and have it still be good. Of course, there were good games on the NES, but most of them were good for the time. So to make something now that can evoke that same feeling and tap into that same nostalgia, and yet be, I think, a good game by modern platforming standards, just in terms of just the level layout and the boss stuff way beyond what the NES ever could have done. Even though this does recreate the NES look and sound beautifully. That's impressive dedication. That's really committing to the bit. And props to the people who made this game. And if you haven't played it, or if you remember hearing about it years ago, and then forgot about it and never got around to it, give it a try. Again, especially if you've got any degree of nostalgia for the 8-bit era. I do. I thought this was terrific. Shovel Knight. You played it? What do you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. I got a Patreon. I've got my birthday coming up soon, and the best present you could give me would be support on the Patreon. Failing that, though, I do have an Amazon and Etsy wish list in the description. Although you don't have to do that either. Like, share, subscribe. They also help me out, but you don't even have to do that. Because I take a relaxed attitude around here. So just come on back next time you need a break.